So the ushers will come down the aisle now and pass out the earplugs. We can go ahead and get those out. Listen, it's Mother's Day. I want to ask you this. Things moms say. Can you think of things your mom said? I was thinking of my mom this morning, passed away a few years ago. And I actually heard somebody say something yesterday at the funeral I did for Sandra. They said that Sandra used to always say, "This too will pass." Do you ever hear that? Did your mother ever say that? I think that's an incredible saying, and I love that saying. Well, there's some others that you probably have heard your mother say that you might have said yourself. Let me see if you can finish the phrase for me, okay? I'll give you the start, and you give me the finish all out loud together. Here we go. I've had it up to here. That's right. And, I was really glad that I had a tall mother because she had more up to here. If I'd had a short mother, I'd have been in trouble all the time. How about this one? You are getting on my... Yeah, some of you have used that. I can tell the way you said that. How about this one? If I've told you once, 1,000 times. When I was growing up, it was 10. It's just gotten harder, I guess. Now it's 1,000. If you fall and break your leg, don't come crying to me, running to me. That's a good one. I like this one. Don't cry over spilled milk, which, this is seldom uttered in the presence of milk. I don't get it, In fact, we're the ones who should be crying with the cost of milk these days, right? If it's spilled. Or what about this one? Don't make me come up there. Don't make me turn this car around. Yeah, that's one we probably have all used. But the one thing that moms say that strikes the most fear in us, I think, that did for me growing up, is this one. Wait until you're... Boy, that was a big threat in our house. It was like, no, don't come home, Daddy. I mean, we were afraid everything was good. But moms also say incredible things. Things like this. I'll be here for you no matter what. They say things like this. You can tell me anything. And then I think, maybe not everything. But what about this one? I will love you to the moon and back. To the moon and back. My mother used to say this too. She would say, I love you a bushel and a peck and yeah, I don't know where she got that from. It's obviously been passed down. And so I want you to pass down these great phrases to your children so that when they become moms, they'll be able to share them with their children. Listen, we're looking at the names of God through the lens of Jehovah. Jehovah, that's what we've been doing. And today is absolutely appropriate that we look at the name of God as Jehovah Jireh. And that's the one, the Lord who provides. You probably already knew that. And I was thinking when we planned this series out months ago, I was thinking, how is it that it just so happened that on this day, God said, I want you to preach on Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides. Because did not the Lord provide? I mean, God is so good. We need to understand that and believe that he knew that Brandon would be able to get this done on this day, and we would be in here. The Lord provides. The name Jehovah Jireh is first seen in Genesis chapter 22. So if you got your Bibles or you have your phone, you can turn to Genesis 22. We're going to look at a story that's really familiar to us. We heard it since childhood, I'm sure. It's the story of Abraham and Isaac when God asked Abraham to do something that none of us would ever think we could ever do. And so it begins in Genesis chapter 22 with verse 1. And notice what it says. Sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. And so he called to him, says, Abraham. God called to him, says, Abraham said, yes, here I am. Here I am. Now, it's interesting that God tested his faith. I'm like, why does God do that? But look at this test that he gave him. You remember this test. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will show you. And I'm thinking, that is one heck of a test. I mean, your only son, the one whom through this promise had been made that you would be many nations would come from you. And God says, go and sacrifice your son. Can you imagine that? I remember before we had Jim, you remember our story of struggling to have Jim and 7 years of going through Augusta and finally out of the blue, a miracle of God, we had Jim, a son, our only son. Before we had him, I can remember that I'd read this story and I think, man, this is terrible, that's really bad. And then I'd flip the page and go to something else. But after we had Jim, our only son, man, I can remember, I think probably the first time I read it after Jim was born, I probably literally cried over the idea that anybody could give up their only son. And it's absolutely true. I mean, God had already tested Abraham. If you know the story of Abraham, you remember what he did? If you look back over, when we're first introduced to him, God just simply says to him, Abraham, go to the land I will show you. You remember that?